So let me just switch to screen sharing real quick for the animations in my presentation to work. So, come on. Just a second. There we go. So the topic for today's CASE Continuing Education webinar is keep your Windows deployments up to date. So you've probably deployed your Windows operating systems using the K2000, and once it's installed, it's not yet finished. So before we start, as a reminder, these are public sessions. We have muted your phones, so please reduce background noise if you unmute yourself. If you want to submit questions during the presentation, you can use the chat feature or the Q&A feature in WebEx. If you submit questions per chat, please submit them to all panelists, to all discussion participants, not just to myself, so that my colleagues can answer those questions in the background. So if you have verbal questions, if you prefer to ask questions verbally, please hold them back. We will have time for Q&A after the presentation. Also, if you have questions that are not related to today's topic, please hold them back until all other questions have been answered. So just a preview to about upcoming sessions. So next week, we'll have a look at using custom inventory rules and fields on the K1000. On February 4th, we'll have a special session for the K1000. We are expecting the version 6.3 to be released at this point in time, and so we're doing a session especially about what is new in the 6.3 release for the K1000. If you have suggestions for topics, please send them to kketeam@case.com. So the calendar can also be found under this link here, case.com/kke. There's a recording archive and also a link to upcoming session and also the contact details if you want to contact us for feedback. So what we'll talk about today is the update challenges we have. So once the Windows operating system is deployed, we are probably not yet finished. Even if we've set it up nicely, and a couple of months later, we probably need to do some more updates on those very same machines or images. So there's different ways to handle these updates. We can use the K2000. We can probably hand over to the K1000. I will also show different ways to handle Windows updates and also spend a few words on how to handle application updates. So it's more or less just some ideas that might help you depending on your situation. We will do a demo after the presentation, and we will also have time for questions. So first of all, we have update challenges. So we installed the operating system, we just have it installed, but is that all? I don't think so. So depending on how you install the operating system, you probably have to do some more tasks after that. So Windows updates, application updates. So keeping those deployments up to date so that a machine is ready to go to the user, to be handed out to the user straight after the deployment through the K2000 is a challenge. That's a maintenance challenge. It's actually work to update the images and update all the tasks to have it basically an actual state at all time. So we have a lot of different ways to install or deploy an operating system, prepare a machine. So in the K1000, we can use scripted installations. Well, the advantage of that is it's independent of hardware. It's a plain OS installation, so it basically works on any Windows compatible hardware. There is no driver issues, no hardware incompatibilities typically. So it's a fairly standard way, doesn't require much to actually set it up. However, it's a plain OS installation, so additional components must be installed afterwards, probably through a post-installation task. So any additional software, Windows updates, service packs have to be installed afterwards. So actually, the deployment of the plain operating system is fairly quick. Getting everything else installed and updated might actually take longer than the initial deployment. That's why a lot of customers work with imaging. So they prepare a machine, take an image of that. That master machine already has some software update installed. It has some Windows update already installed, service packs. So it is prepared. So that saves us some time and energy afterwards. However, it doesn't mean that that was it for all. Basically, every couple of months, you have to revisit your image, take a look, and probably update it again. So an image cannot be easily updated. It's also a lengthy maintenance process to update your master image, recapture it, so that it's ready for deployment. So concerning imaging process, let me give you some recommendations. So first of all, we use a plain operating system installation. When you get your master machine or your designated master machine from a vendor, it might not be suited to serve as a master PC because that operating system might have already been sysprepped. So it's better actually to do a K2 scripted install for a base OS installation. Then you prepare the master, you install drivers, probably you install operating system updates, additional software, configure your user profile to make it ready for the capture process. Now we recommend to capture a non-sysprepped image. Why? We'll get to that later. So then we do the sysprep. So sysprep prepares the machine for the image for deployment, mass deployment, and then we'll capture the sysprepped image. Once we've captured the sysprepped image, we test the deployment, and then we can go into production. Now, what we actually use for the deployment is the sysprepped image, because only the sysprepped image officially is ready to be deployed to many different machines. What we use for maintenance, that is the non-sysprepped image. So the reason for that is, first of all, the non-sysprepped image is like a restore point if something goes wrong during the sysprep process. And secondly, that non-sysprepped image, if we restored it to a machine and update it, it's like having a fresh install of the machine that has never been sysprepped before. If you reset the grace period for the activation, then you can only do that 3 times in the sysprep process. That's why we use a non-sysprepped image. Now that whole process is quite lengthy. Again, capturing images twice, doing syspreps, restoring, updating, and so on. Now the question is, what do we put into the image, or is it better actually to add a post-installation task? So Windows Update service packs definitely go into the image because that's the easiest way and the quickest way to deploy them. As a post-installation task, it's still a lengthy process. But what about software? Now that really depends on the software itself, on the situation. If you have software that everybody needs, include it in image. If it's a software that not everybody needs, that only some special users need, then it's better to install it through a post-installation task. Do you have a software that is changing the versions often? Well, in this case, it's probably better to use a post-installation task then, or even the K1000 managed install, because then you can install the latest version straight away instead of installing an older version that has to be updated. If your software, however, is staying on a version for a longer time, then you can put it into the image. Now, the K1000 agent, that shouldn't go into the image, because then you would be cloning the case IDs, which might cause some problems, some issues with the K1000, so we'll stay away from that. Some software also causes problem when trying to deploy through a managed install or post-installation task. I've actually encountered some software where it was actually better to install it manually on the master PC. Some other softwares, like some antivirus clients, cannot be installed into the image because they, like the case agent, create a unique ID that would be cloned. So we've prepared the image, we've put some software in, and anything else that could not go into the image, we can use post-installation tasks for. So the K2000 allows us to run post-installation tasks. They run after the OS has been installed, so we can run them either in the boot environment or we can run them in the Windows environment. So we can install, we can modify configuration settings of the systems if it's different from what we've got in the image, or especially when we've used the scripted install. We can install core applications either from the network, a local computer, or directly through the K2000. We definitely install the K1000 agent through a post-installation task because that's fairly simple and easy to do. So post-installation tasks both work with scripted installs and imaging. So especially with scripted install, we'll probably use a lot of them. So just some ideas what you can do with post-installation tasks is in terms of operating system settings, like disabling the Windows firewall, adding domain accounts or groups to the local admin groups. So setting the wireless configuration on a provisioned device so that it automatically enters the wireless network. Sometimes we use it to clean up. So when we've installed some patches, we can remove the temporary files if we don't need them anymore. So through the registry, we can enable or disable a lot of things like remote desktop or set a computer description. We can trigger the activation of the OS if it's not already activated. Configure printer details. So in theory, anything that you have a command for can be done through a post-installation task. So the difficulty is actually finding the right command. Once you've got that, you can use that for your post-installation tasks. Now, if not, we can also hand over to the K1000. Now, the K1000 and K2000 at this point in time don't actually communicate much. So how does the K1000 know that the K2000 has deployed a new system, and what type of systems or what the K1000 shall do? Now, we can use a technique called breadcrumbs. So what we do is we configure the K2000 to leave a breadcrumb behind. A breadcrumb basically is a marker we leave behind in the registry or as a file. It's an indicator of, for example, what department or what location or what function this machine is supposed to go to or belongs to. So the breadcrumb can be picked up by the K1000 so that it knows what to do with it. Then we start manage installs to deploy software. For example, you use a breadcrumb that indicates the department. So the finance department gets some special software that others don't get. Or engineering might get special software, or maybe they get special permissions on their machine, like they become local administrators. So we can use a script, the K-script, to reconfigure the system. Or we can run regular patch schedules that update operating system and software and target and use the breadcrumb as a target. So only machines that show a particular breadcrumb are included in those special schedules. So what does it look like? Basically, anything that's easy to find. So we most of the time use a registry key somewhere in a branch that we can easily get to. So ideally, like we show here, under HKLM software, and then we use the company name. So we can deploy basically a registry key using our company name. We can leave a value behind that we can easily pick up. So a post-installation task on the K2000 of type batch, so running a batch script with a single command in it is sufficient for that. So in theory, it's just we use the rec command, we add a key, probably the /f is forcing the key, so if it already exists, it will still set it without presenting an error. Now that breadcrumb needs to be picked up by the K1000. We do that through a custom inventory rule. So a custom inventory rule basically is just a software inventory record, a manual record that we enter. We have to give it a name. The name is important because this is our identifier later for a smart label. We have to define the operating systems that we want to run this rule on. So only these operating systems that are marked down here will run that rule. And we define the rule itself. So in the custom inventory rule field, like in this example, we check the registry for a value. So we look under HKLM software del case and look if there is a value called accounting, and it's set to 1. So if that is the case, this software detail, the K2 breadcrumb accounting, will be listed underneath the installed software in this machine's inventory. And last but not least, we'll build a smart label on it. So a simple smart label, filtering the software titles that contain the name K2 breadcrumb accounting, filters out all the machines. So using that label, we can easily identify all the machines that belong to accounting. Even if we don't know them by name, we just use that registry key that's been placed by the K2000 and pick that up through the custom inventory rule. Now, there is a question in chat, how does it work with Windows 64 bits or 32 bits with registry? That's actually a good question. We've been presenting this breadcrumb method a couple of times before. That's why I didn't go into that much detail. So the case agent is a 32-bit software, so it actually gets redirected to the 32-bit registry hive. So when you're looking for HKLM software del case, the case agent actually gets redirected to HKLM software WOW 6432 node del case. So if the breadcrumb is not in that particular place, we won't find it. So what I would suggest is disregard it in the custom inventory rules, but build two different breadcrumbs. Because when you deploy an operating system, you always know what architecture of operating system you're deploying. So what you do is, because this runs under different contexts, this runs as local admin, not through the case agent. So instead of on a 64-bit system, instead of putting the breadcrumb into HKLM software and then the company name, you deploy it into HKLM software WOW 6432 name, to node, and then the company name. So essentially, you create two breadcrumb post-install tasks, one for 32-bit, one for 64-bit. On the 32-bit, you don't need to do any changes. You can leave that one only on the 64-bit. Right. So we've built a smart label, so we are able to identify those machines. So how do we detect newly deployed devices? Well, now, that device that carries the accounting background might have been deployed like 6 months ago, because if we don't remove that registry key, it will still fall under that smart label. Now, there's another method we can use. Every time you deploy an operating system, Windows operating system, to a Windows machine, the K2000 places a file called K2000 deployment info conf into the directory where the case agent will be installed later on. So that K2000 deployment info conf file has some information about the deployment type, deployment name, the time and date of the deployment. Now, it's actually easier. We can use the creation time of that file to find out when this machine was installed. So a simple custom inventory rule, returning information about that file up here, and what we return as information is the creation time in date format. So this gives us exact date and time when this machine has been installed through the K2000. And then we can build a simple smart label on it. So I've named this rule, rule K2000 deployment info date, and I'm checking if the return value is within the last 2 days. So when I install a new machine through the K2000, that file gets created once the agent is installed and the machine checks into the K1000. The K1000 executes that custom inventory rule, looks at the creation time and date. If that is within the last 2 days, that machine falls under that label. If the machine is already older, it will fall out of that label. It will lose that label. So what we can do with that is we target specific managed installs, patch schedules, scripts, anything we need to run at this smart label. So what it means is you deploy a new machine through the K2000. Within the first 2 days, it gets picked up. Basically, the managed install, the patch schedules run on that machine, and after 2 days, it automatically falls out. We can hand it out to the user. You can adjust that time frame. So if you think 2 days is too long, not long enough, you can adjust that time frame. Now, let's have a look at different ways to handle Windows updates. Now, especially when we use scripted installs, one of the problems is to install the Windows updates. When you install a plain Windows 7, even if you use a Service Pack 1 CD, it's still hundreds of updates, probably around 200 updates now, that you have to run afterwards. That is a very lengthy process. There's different ways to do that. It also depends on where the machine is located, where it goes. So depending whether you have remote users, if you hand out to the machine and machine is remote, it must get the updates somewhere. So it might depend on the download bandwidth, on the target groups. So there's lots of different considerations. So we could use the built-in Windows Update function, just enable Windows Update, and yeah, sit there for quite a while. But you might actually need several reboots. So either the admin, you as an admin, or the user has to basically watch the machine and reboot it every time a reboot is required. We can hand it over to the K1000, so we run a patch job, patch schedule on the K1000. It's a similar problem. We have to run a detection deployment. Now with the breadcrumb method, we can actually run a special patch job that automatically detects and deploys all missing patches with automatic reboots. So at least we don't need to watch the machine. If you're using WSUS, it's pretty much similar to the Windows updates, so it's not much difference there. Now, there's 2 more methods that can be used. We'll have a deeper look into both those 2 remaining methods. Now, updating the source media. The Windows media you can get from Microsoft these days does have the Service Pack 1 included. However, any further updates have not been included. And Windows has just basically end-of-lifed Windows 7, was it last week? So there will be no functional updates anymore, only security updates. So we don't expect to get new CDs for Windows 7. We can slipstream. So updating the source media is called slipstream. Slipstream update into the source media itself. So there's a couple of different tools that might help with that. So you can use RT7 Lite. There's a tool called DISM GUI. There's a tool called WinToolkit, Windows Update Downloader. So many different tools that do slipstreaming. Some do it better, some do it worse, but it depends also on the situation. So it does definitely help with scripted installations because that's where we use the media. So you can slipstream updates into the installation media. So during the installation, all the updates are already installed. We don't have to do that afterwards. So that drastically reduces the time that we need after the actual Windows installation for the Windows updates. Even if we don't get everything in there, it might cut down the updates needed from like 150 or 200 to maybe 20 or 30 missing updates. So not everything can be slipstreamed. So there are some components that cannot be slipstreamed. For example, .NET. This mostly depends on what format they have been provided, what package format. So .NET, VC Redist, Internet Explorer are probably difficult to slipstream or impossible to slipstream. So one tool that I've used, which I find quite convenient, is a tool called Windows Hotfix Downloader. When you Google for the tool or use Bing to find that tool, it's a freeware. So this tool actually does two things. So it does allow you to download the Windows updates and then slipstream them into the media. So it's basically two tools combined into one. Not all of the other tools do both. Sometimes you need to download the updates and then the tool can pick them up. So Windows Hotfix Downloader, again, is a tool that I find quite easy to use. So first of all, you select what update list you want to pick. So I recommend to just use one, don't mix it up. So use one Windows version architecture. So once you selected the update list, you can also update the lists here to get the latest lists. Once you have those lists, you can see down here in Downloader and Downloaded all your updates that are available, categorized into general updates, hotfixes, security updates, additional, and extra. So basically the first three categories, general, hotfix, and security, are relatively simple to slipstream. All the other ones in additional and extra updates, you need to test which ones work and which ones don't work. So you select the updates, then basically trigger the download. The tool will download all the updates that you need, and then you can integrate it into a media. The nice thing is, for the integration, this tool also allows you to pick DISM, because all those tools basically rely on Microsoft's DISM tool. The DISM tool is from the Windows 7 ARK and is also on Windows 7 machines as part of the operating system. However, on a Windows 7 machine, it's an older version of DISM. So what I would recommend is download the Windows 8.1 ADK and select the DISM from the 8.1 ADK. So once you've done that, you can actually do, there's more functions in there, but what we want to do is to go into that configuration, select Windows, select Integrate. So on subsequent screens, that tool actually allows us first of all, to select the source media. So we copy the source media, the Windows CD that we want to slipstream the updates into, copy that onto the hard drive. We select the WIM image that's in there. So that's then being mounted. And then we can select which of the downloaded updates we want to slipstream into the media. There's more functions in that tool, so you can even tweak the unattended files and such. However, please stay away from that when you use it for Windows 2000, because that might collide with Windows 2000 functions. So we only want to use it for integration of updates. Also, as best practice, it's recommended to use the media from the Microsoft Developer Network or volume license media, because that's the most complete and most compatible. So that will create a media, an updated media we can upload through the K2000 Media Manager. Another tool that can be used to handle updates is called WSS Offline. WSS Offline is also a freeware. So it's a small tool. You just unzip it, run it. There's a tool, exe file called Update Generator, which is that screen on the right-hand side here. So you launch it, then you select your operating system that you want to download patches for. You can add more sections, like you want to include Service Pack, you want to include DC Redist or .NET, and so on. So that can be selected, and you click on Start. Then the tool starts to download all those updates and places them into a subdirectory. Now, there's also a second portion of the tool called Update Installer that allows you to install those updates on the system, where that then must be configured into a post-installation task. So WSS Offline is not a tool to slipstream updates into media. It's basically bundling the updates, and it's installing the updates after the actual deployment. So we need a post-installation task to run that tool. So what we do there is the WSS Offline has a directory called Client, where all the downloaded updates go into. So there's updates like .NET for the .NET updates. There's the actual Windows updates. There are some other directories where there are some optional or any other updates in there. So, and there's an update.cmd. That command file can be used to automatically install all those updates basically in one go. Now, to use that with the K2000, what we need to do is we need to grab that whole client directory, so the content of that whole directory, grab that, either upload it as a zip file, zip it up, upload it to the K2000 as a PO task, or put it on network share. And then we just call that update CMD. There are some parameters like installing IE version or installing .NET as well, or automatic rebooting. So once you have a look into that update CMD, you can see all the parameters. But that tool will then install all the updates in basically a very short time. So it's a lot quicker than using the Windows Update function. So a few tips with WSS Offline. The client directory needs to be zipped up. You can create a post-installation task. So basically, it's add an application, you upload the zip file to it, and what you call is just the update.cmd within the client directory. So relatively simple to handle. The size might be an issue because you can only upload up to 2 GB. That might be an issue. And also, if you refresh that directory with the updates, you probably have to re-upload the zip file. So there's another way to handle that is you place the client directory on a network share. You create a post-installation task. It's just a batch file to use to mount the network share. Then you switch to the network share, call the update installer, basically are called the update CMD to launch the updates, and then a third PO task that unmounts the network share. So that bypasses the size limitation. There's no updates on the K2 required when you update the Windows updates. So that's a different way to handle that. But what about application updates? So application updates have different requirements. So there's some stuff we can handle with the K2000, some stuff. So in the K2000, we would need to update our PO tasks every time. On the K1000, we can probably use patching for that. So there's different ways, different requirements to handle that. With drivers, some of the drivers, like the NVIDIA drivers, the graphics drivers, we probably need to use them, install them through a PO task as well, and that probably has to be updated as well, because if we want to have the little tools, management tools, we need to run it as a PO task. So we can use the K1000. Anything that's in the patch catalog can be easily updated through the patch catalog. But there is also a tool called K2000. K2000 it's not automatically updating our applications, but it can help updating applications. It can make life easier. So it doesn't depend on the K1000 or the K2000. It's basically a general tool. So again, K2000 is a freeware tool. So you need to configure that tool to look out for applications. So I configured it, for example, to look for installation files for Flash Player, for Adobe Reader, for Java, KeyPass, Firefox, VLC. And every time I launch the tool, I just need to click on Update Applications, and it will actually download if there is a new version of those applications available. So the nice thing is I can define a directory where it goes to. So I have a common directory where I put all my applications, and I can basically have from there. I don't need to visit every vendor's website to look if there's a new version manually downloaded. This tool actually does that for me. What it can also do, I can define the file name. So for example, with Firefox, Mozilla Firefox carries the version number in the name. So every time there is a new version, the command to install that program, that application, varies because the version number varies. I can tell K2000 to always use the name firefox.exe. So what I can do then is I can use, again, a network share. So I tell K2000 to download the software and place it on the network share, and I use a predefined name for the installer file. So I don't use the name that it comes with. I call it like firefox.exe, I call it reader.exe, so just a generic name. Then I use a post-installation task that mounts the network share, and I call those installation, so application installations from the network share. So I install the software from the share using this standard name. So I don't have to modify my PO tasks. My PO task basically just goes onto the network share, launches Firefox exe with the silent parameter, and that's it. So I'm pretty sure that every time I run that, I have the latest version because K2000 is putting that onto the share for me. Then I unmount it, the network share, and that's pretty much it. So the advantage is I don't need to look and check the vendor websites for new versions. K2000 does it for me. I don't need to update the post-installation tasks. So that's a real pro. However, the network share must be accessible. So you need to access the share with credentials because PO tasks run as local administrator, not as a domain user. So even if it's probably an open share to all domain users, it doesn't mean that a local user gets access to that. Right, so much about ideas keeping your deployments up to date. As you've seen, this is not one common procedure. It depends on your preferences, depends on your situations. So what we wanted to do was just give you a couple of ideas how you can make your life easier. So are there any questions at this point in time? There is a question about the link for the Windows hotfix downloader. I'll look for that in a second. Are there any other questions? So Windows hotfix downloader you can actually get from a couple of different repositories. So a lot of computer magazines actually host it. I think the original. So this is the link to Windows hotfix downloader. I'll place it in the chat as well. Just be aware of whatever you download from Softonic, make sure you unselect all the additional stuff that comes with it. Okay, so there's questions about in chat about updating applications like Google Chrome and also the K2000 file. Right, so let me just stop the presentation. And switch over to, let me start with that first, the K2000. So just some ideas of what we've talked about. So I do have a couple of post-installation tasks that I've prefixed them with app. So anything that is in here is basically an application. So there's a zip package or a DMG attached to it, and I'm just basically launching those installations. So that's the traditional way to do that. What also can be done, I have two tasks called prep. First of all, mounting a network share. So I just use the net use command and basically connect myself to a network share and mount it as drive T. So once it's mounted, I can actually use that. I have, for example, a patching task for the .NET updates that is using that. So that actually also connects itself. So it's, the mounting is already in there. So I'm mounting the network share. I'm switching to the drive into the updates directory for .NET. And then I'm basically calling any files that are called ndp whatever.exe. I launch them in passive no restart mode, and then just writing a log message. So this goes through the whole directory and basically launches any file that starts with ndp and is an exe file. So if there's a new .NET update, I just have to place it into that updates net directory, the next time I deploy a machine, it's already included. It will be installed. So there is similar stuff. Like here is one, the prerequisites for Internet Explorer 11. There's also a couple of updates. So I've just bundled them. Just open that zip file. So it's basically just the Windows updates, and then I use a batch file to install those Windows updates that are required for Internet Explorer 11. The WSUS offline can be used in different ways. So where was that patch? There is the WSUS offline. That's actually an older version I used with Windows XP. I haven't updated it for quite a while. So that WSUS WinXP zip file is basically just the content of the client directory, zipped up, uploaded as an application PO task, and then I just call the update.cmd. And this will basically install all the updates that are included in here. Most of the time, it only requires a single reboot at the very end. So it's a lot quicker than using Windows updates or than using K1000 patch schedule. Right, so then let me just check the, I've got a breadcrumb still in there. No, I believe I've already deleted that. Okay, no, it's gone. Okay, so the breadcrumb would be just basically adding a bat script, then rec add HKLM. My keyboard doesn't like me. Somehow it's switched. So I would need a backspace. So do an HKLM and so on to add, like we described in the, like I've shown in the presentation. Okay. Let me just switch to the other stuff, the other updates. So Katarine, the tool that I've described for the updates of applications. So it just downloads those updates. So I have a directory up here which is called Katarine down, and so I'm placing all the files basically in here. So when you click on add an application, so when it comes, there's nothing in that screen, so you have to configure it to look out for applications. So when you add an application, it asks you for application name, category, URL. You can use a file hippo ID to automatically look out for. You can use variables and so on. So it's actually relatively complex to set up. However, there's a very, very easy way. So you just use that little arrow down here and you say import from online database. So there's a database of basically user suggestions, and those users, they provided all the syntax for you. So I can just type in and say Chrome, and I do a search. So there's different hits, especially when it comes to international versions. You might not always be successful, but it's better than File Hippo. So if I say I want Google Chrome 32-bit, there's another one, x86, a couple of more suggestions. So yeah, you probably have to test which one is the correct one. So if we say Google Chrome x86, I want that, and I just do an import. So that tool, that Chrome, is now added. If I call it, if I open that, all I need is already in there. So there's actually variables behind there for the download link. So there's a, it's not simple actually to come up with those variables. So what I can do is I can either say save it in folder. So I want to use my K2000 down directory, or I can even say I want to save it to a file. And I specifically call that file chrome.exe. So I'm basically eliminating the versioning in the file name itself. Just click on OK. And if I go on Update All, K2000 will actually visit all those websites, all those sources, check if there is a new version available. And if yes, it will actually start to download it. Now, this tool is only downloading the installation file, so we still need to implement the mechanism to automatically pick them up, but at least we don't have to check every time for the new versions. So moving on to another question about the K2000 config file. Every machine that's been deployed by the K2000, every Windows machine has that K2000 deployment info conf. So if I open Windows Explorer and I need to go on the Windows drive, so where the Windows installation is located. So with older machines, Windows XP and Windows 2003, that file is located within the documents and settings, and then all users. With newer operating systems, it's placed in the program data directory. Program data is a hidden directory. So underneath program data, we've got del, and we've got case. So it's C program data del case. And here is that K2000 deployment info conf. So my machine was installed 25th of March. It's just a text file. So if we open that in editor, we get some more information about deployment type. This was a scripted installation. The name of the scripted installation actually was a KKE, and so on. And this is the directory where the case agent is being installed into. That's the data directory for the case agent. Right, so just a quick run through with the Windows hotfix downloader. So again, you just download the tool, you launch it. It doesn't actually require an installer. Okay, so the first thing you do is you download the latest update list. So some other tools that are on the market, you actually have to provide the update list. So you have to download a list of available Windows updates from some other source, import into the tool. That tool does it. So you just click there and you say, I want to update the list for Windows 7 x64. Then I select that list. And it'll tell me that I've already downloaded 454 and there's 158 more. So I can load it up. So there's a couple more of those updates. I can just do a right click somewhere and just, I think the select all was again, yeah, select all is just within. There was a way actually to, sorry, to select just that section. Yeah, so I'm going to click on the right-hand side. So these are fairly small. So if I click on download, it will actually go out and download all those for me. Okay, just canceling here. Now, once we've got the downloads, the updates available, here is a button for tools and settings. So that little update here, the little button here. So what I would highly recommend is adjust the DISM path. So that DISM path here, because the default points to your, like in my case, my Windows 7 DISM, I've redirected it to the DISM in my Windows 8.1 assessment and deployment kit. So I'm using the newer, the latest DISM version. So once you've set that, then you can go onto Windows, you go onto Integrate, you select your installation folder or ISO image. If you select an ISO image, it will be extracted and a temporary copy placed onto your hard drive. So you can copy that. Actually, sorry, no ISO image. So this was the source. So we need to go into the sources directory of the Windows CD, or select. Okay. Someone in the sources. Okay, I need to check what's on there. Sources. And install Vim. There it is. Okay, for whatever reason, doesn't find the install Vim. Anyway, so when you select that, the tool will then mount the install Vim. On my machine, that takes about 10 to 15 minutes. So we wouldn't be able to demonstrate it here anyway. Once the Vim image is mounted, you can select which updates you want to integrate. So the tool does not automatically slipstream all the updates that you've downloaded into the media. You actually have the choice which ones you want to slipstream, and then you just click on Start, and it will automatically integrate them and unmount the install Vim, and then you've got a slipstreamed installation CD. Right, are there any further questions? I don't see any new questions in Q&A and no new questions in chat. So the K2 version that we've used today was 3.7. So the latest version that's already out. So anything else we didn't touch today, there will be a new K1000 version shortly. So again, look out for the special session about K1 version 6.3. So again, next week we'll do a session about custom inventory rules and fields, and then on February 4th, that's the plan to run a session on the new version of the K1000. Again, if you have any suggestions, feedback about our KKE webinars, send them to kketeam@case.com. So again, we've had that before. Right, so with that, we're at the end of our webinar for today. I hope you found some useful information. So if there's no further questions, we'll close the session for today. So have a nice evening and hope to see you next week.